Hey everybody, welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. I wasn't going to record this video, but I think it's important to see this process of what we're going to be doing. So we're actually going to be doing the exhaust today. So let's get underneath the car and I'll show you exactly what we're going to be doing with the exhaust. Alright, so here is the exhaust from underneath. You can see that this is not an M3 exhaust. We are going to be using the non-M exhaust with the M3 headers. And I actually cut the exhaust flanges off of the non-M side because that's what I was told to do by the exhaust shop we're taking it to. Now the reason we're keeping the non-M exhaust is because we are going to be keeping the spare tire well. So it is only going to be one muffler with two tips out the back on the one side. We did get some exhaust tips, so we're going to be putting those on as well. Here is what I was told to do. That's what it looks like right now. And I'm sure I got a couple of you asking, okay, why are you downgrading to a non-M exhaust? We're gonna go over the sizing here in just a second. The biggest reason we're doing this is because I've got a non-M exhaust, there's nothing wrong with it, and besides getting the other flanges welded onto these ones, that's really all I gotta do. It matches up perfectly. There is a little bit of a spacing difference, but the shop said they can get that figured out without too much trouble. So let's go over to the workbench where I've got the other side of these, the other flanges, and the pieces I cut off, and we can actually see the difference in diameter. So here is the piece that I cut off the M3 exhaust, and that's what we'll be welding to the non-M exhaust. And then here is the flange that I was told to remove because you can see here it scoops up. And what that would have done is it made it so that I couldn't actually put the non-M exhaust on the car and just like have it sit there, because this was going to start touching the headers and we were going to have problems. We're not driving the car very far. I'm trailering it everywhere, but just having that sit there and constantly hit the headers, we don't want to damage the headers. So we removed this. As you can see, it looks like there's quite a bit of a difference between the two. In fact, this will actually slip over this one, which would make anybody think that this is significantly smaller and that we're actually going to be doing a large downgrade. But if you look at the measurements here from outside to outside, this is 2 3/16, and then coming over here to the non-M exhaust, if you measure this from outside to outside, it is exactly 2 inches. You won't really notice anything. This will save us a lot of money versus like building a completely custom exhaust or getting something completely custom. Welding this on is going to be a couple $100, and then I've got some exhaust tips. We're pretty excited about this, and it'll be one step closer to getting this on the road legally. All right, so while we wait for the car to come back from the exhaust shop, we are going to be working on some exhaust tips. Now you can see here that side has already been removed. We are actually going to be using these exhaust tips on the back of the M3 Wagon. Now the M3 Wagon is only going to have 2 exhaust tips, so we only need a pair of them. But we did this side, and I thought that it was an interesting enough process that we would do them on camera. So I'm going to pull these ones off and do the exact same thing we did the other side, and then I'll also be showing how we're going to be mounting these up once the car comes back from the shop. So these are being held on by rivets. There are 2 here on the bottom, and then there is 1 on the top in the middle. Now you can see here that these are being held on by rivets. There are 2 here on the bottom and then 1 on the top. What you do with these, just like you remove any other rivet, you get 1 drill bit size that matches that interior diameter, and then you get 1 that's a size or 2 up, and that way we can get rid of the rivets. If we decide to put these back on, all I will do is clean these tips off and then just put some new rivets, put it back together. If we decide to use these on another project, which will probably end up happening since this muffler is probably not going back on the M3 shell, when it becomes a race car, these exhaust tips are probably going to be pulled off and used for a different project. The other thing you can see here is that they are offset just a little bit. This one sticks out just a little bit further than the other one, and that's probably what we're going to be doing on the Wagon. I like how these just kind of step up, especially on the Wagon where the exhaust tips aren't towards the middle. These are actually closer together than where the M3 Wagon would sit. So the Wagon tips sit more like right here, and the bumper is still curving as it goes around those tips. So to have something like this where they're staggered so it basically sticks out the same amount as the bumper curves around, I've always thought that was really cool. So that's what we're going to be doing. So let's get these removed. We're going to be using some Superclean to clean these up. I'll be showing that process here in just a little bit. They do have stuff that is designed to clean chrome, and that's what we're going to be using. It cleans up really well. So let's get these taken off and start cleaning them up. Here are the exhaust tips that we just removed. Now my cleaning process goes as follows. We're actually going to be using some Superclean. Every review that I've looked up on this, they're cleaning chrome wheels. So here we are, instead of chrome exhaust tips. This actually works really well. And then I use a little bit of steel wool where it's really bad. Everything else I just use like a toothbrush or an aggressive sponge. So places like the bottom of the exhaust tips, these tend to get really bad because this is where everything comes and congregates when the car gets wet. Everything comes and drips and hangs out on the bottom of these exhaust tips. So I'll use a little bit of steel wool on these really aggressive areas, and then on the inside and on this upper lip here, that will be cleaned with steel wool. The rest of this, like I said, is just done with a toothbrush. And here are the pair that I've already done. So these ones here have already been cleaned, and you can see on the inside of the exhaust tip is probably the only spot I wasn't able to clean, but I don't think that has anything to do with this cleaner lacking in any power. I think it really comes down to how dirty these are on the inside, that or they're actually started to corrode on the inside, or they weren't chromed on the inside quite the same way they were on the outside. We're gonna be cleaning all 4 of these up. The 2 nicest ones will be going on the wagon, and the other 2 will be packaged up, put away, and ready for another project. All right, here they are, all done up. And like I said, I used some steel wool in some of the more aggressive spots, and I went over it with a toothbrush, and then I dried them off, and here they are. I'm actually gonna be using these 2 for the car. These ones actually have quite a bit of dents in them. I'm not sure if you can see that one right there. There's another one right there. So I'm not sure where a lot of these dents are coming from. If they were on the bottom, I would assume that they got flicked with a rock really hard. That's kind of why they almost look like they've been hit by a BB gun. But some of these dents are like on the top, like this one's on the side, that one's on the side right there at the top. These 2 are actually in better condition all the way around. I should be getting a call for the car any minute now. When the car gets back, I'll show everybody how the exhaust looks and then how these are gonna look on the car. Here we are back in the garage with the car. Went and picked it up a little bit ago. Now, the exhaust setup that we decided to do was to take the M3 exhaust and the non-M exhaust and move the flanges over. So that's all that happened. And it ended up working out fantastic. All they had to do was, there is a clamp that holds the 2 exhausts together, not much past that flange. They took the clamp off and spread the exhaust pipes out just a little bit because the M exhausts are just a little bit wider apart than the non-M. That's all they had to do. It only charged me about 65 minutes worth of labor, so I was able to get this done for around $100. And then the other thing I want to mention is it's very, very quiet. So that's kind of one of the things I was worried about and happy about at the same time. So the owner of this car doesn't want a super raspy, very loud car. And the type of car that we're building here is a bit of a sleeper. It's still plenty loud. It's gonna be louder than a 325 was, but it's gonna be nowhere near what the M3 was. The M3 did have an aftermarket mid-pipe and headers that are catless, but this is gonna be more like a stock 325 that's a little bit louder. It's still gonna have a little bit of zest to it, but it's not gonna be even like a stock M3 exhaust. So that's probably the downside, upside to this car. If it was my car, I'd want it to be a little bit louder, but it's gonna work out great for this car as it is gonna be a sleeper. So let's go take a look underneath the car. And then depending on when these exhaust tips are installed, if they're installed in time enough for me to actually have them in this video before I go to edit the content, you might see those at the end of the video as well. But for right now, let's go over the exhaust and at least hear it. So here is the exhaust. It's not the most pretty thing, but it does not leak and it is fully functional. So they had to rotate the one flange. You can see this one here on the left is what it originally was, and both of them were at the angle. This one here on the right was rotated just a little bit, and then you can see the welds back there where they installed the 2 pieces of exhaust. The welds look decent, plenty of metal, not worried about them leaking at all. I've been underneath the car several times now since I've got it home, listening to it, having somebody rev it, feeling it, and it doesn't look like it's going to leak at all. Then if we continue all the way back here, here is the rest of the exhaust, all the way out to the muffler. Now, what's nice about these tips here is that they are just the right diameter so that the exhaust tips that we're gonna be adding actually slide right over top of them and just almost friction fit on there. What I'll probably end up doing is dropping this exhaust because I do have some heat shielding to put back up in there. So I'm actually gonna slip these tips on so that we can see what they look like roughly. With that butterfly valve there, it's not gonna let them slide all the way on, but we'll get kind of a rough idea. So here's what the tips look like. Obviously those are poking out way too far, but just kind of imagine about that right there, but back about, I don't know, probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So it'll just kind of follow the bumper. Pretty excited to get those put on properly. But for today, thanks for watching. Check out our Patreon, link in the description below. Also check out our Instagram, link in the description below as well. Like, comment, share, subscribe. We will see everybody in the next video.